What a whirlwind day. So many speakers, so many panels, and believe it or not, we are now coming to our final panel and theme for today, which is Going Global, the UK driving the charge for change. So before we introduce our final panel for today, I would like to thank you all for coming today and for taking an active interest in these discussions. We hope that they have been of value and insightful. And thank you to all our speakers, the team at Innovate Finance, and yes, I think we deserve a round of applause. And to all of our bronze and silver sponsors and our gold sponsors, Visa and Barclays Rise. And to Scribe Yak, thank you so much, Tom, for listening and scribbling and doodling away. Please do take a picture before you all head out. Please do join us for networking as soon as we wrap up, because we would love to see you all there. I would love to speak to all of you because I've been up here. Tea and coffee will be served at the back of the room. I am Rashi Pandey, Associate Director of Membership and Growth at Innovate Finance, and I've really enjoyed being your host for today. Now, before I go over to our chair, Lou Smith, to close the day and give her final thoughts, we have one final amazing panel to introduce, and we ask all of you to cooperate across borders and work together for a better world. So to bring up our final speakers, no pressure, Dan, please welcome Dan Jones, who is a partner at Orrick.
Thanks, Rashi. Is that working? Yeah. And picking up where Hamza left off, here is the awesome rest of the conference. And I'm really pleased to say that we do have a brilliant panel to finish things off. And I think we sort of just get straight into it, but let me introduce them. We've got Kerstin Mathias, who is Policy and Innovation Director at the City of London Corporation, where she leads the city's global financial services policy. We've got Tom Winstanley, who is Group CTO of NTT Data in the UK and Ireland, and leads its new ventures and R&D units. We've got Flora Coleman, who heads up the global policy and government relations team at Klarna. And finally, but no means least, we've got Leiming Chen, who is Senior Vice President at Ant Group, responsible for international public policy and government affairs. Now, we've heard throughout the day how UK fintech is really leading the way in making the world better. It is doing brilliant things, but how do we take that micro impact and expand it and have a macro impact? How do we take it around the world? Perhaps, Kerstin, I can start with you.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, if I'm thinking about the kind of areas where we really need technology and rapid solutions, then of course the first thing that comes to mind is climate change. And we've had a couple of panels looking at green and looking at decarbonization. So it was great to see that that was being discussed throughout the day already, and I think it really needs to be discussed as part of this final panel as well, because it certainly seems to me it's the biggest challenge we face. It is also one of the most multifaceted challenges we've ever seen, and it's genuinely a global challenge, so it will require a global solution. And because it's impossible to go into a meeting or to listen to a panel without anyone mentioning AI these days, I'm going to get it out of the way so the rest of the panel can focus on other things. AI and companies working on AI solutions have a really crucial role to play in this as well. And if we think about something such as windmills, where of course the UK actually has been a leader on offshore wind, even there AI can really play an important role. We need bigger windmills, we need bigger wind farms, and in order to be able to accomplish that, we need stronger material, incredibly strong material that at the same time is really light, and AI companies can really help with that. At the same time, AI can also play a crucial role in helping us to analyze some of the data we're seeing, and when we're looking at mitigation financing efforts, it can help us direct the money to the right solutions. And so I think this is really an area where the UK can use its innovative powers plus its leadership in the climate space, bring them together and lead the world globally in the right way.
I mean, I think there's a good reason that ESG has been on the agenda last year and this year so heavily, but certainly AI kind of creeping up and really taking or fighting for that top spot. What do you think, Tom? Anything to add?
Well, I'd certainly endorse everything you've just said in terms of the sustainability angle. The UK has, and this forum actually, this is now what, the third or fourth of these events. You've seen each year how that has developed and how the UK is really pushing ahead. I work for the NTT Group, right? So a Japanese multinational, massive corporate organization. The last session we just had was the ask was spend your money in the right areas from a data processing and data cloud perspective. NTT, 1% of the Japanese energy consumption. So any minor impact that we can make in that space from an ESG, from a sustainability point of view, hugely impactful. So technology, transfer, and the underpinning data structures, which we've heard about a number of times today, are for me central to what the UK has to offer to the rest of the world. And that builds on the open banking legacy here and or heritage, I should say, in the UK. But I think that there's an opportunity for us to go well beyond that, and you can see that with a bunch of the fintechs that have been talking today that I think are eager and willing and able to get out there if we can give them the right structure. I think multinationals like NTT Group, but also the large corporate banks are predestined really to drive that stuff forward.
And Flora, I mean, we've seen Klarna grow in recent years, moving around different jurisdictions. What are you seeing? How are you taking this cooperation forward?
Yeah, so I think a couple of things. So on the cooperation point, it's very important to have that inclusion. And the challenge with newer institutions like fintech, like Klarna, and previous fintech firms I've worked at, is that then the traditional institutions just aren't built to engage with these high-growth startups. They've got a lot of people who are perhaps on their first role in a corporate structure, or it's their first time being in a leadership role, certainly. A lot of people who've never worked in banking and financial services before, who've got some great experience from technology businesses, and instead they're thrust into these roles and these responsibilities by governments and institutions that ask them to spend hours upon hours wading through committees, as opposed to coming up with innovative action plans and moving forward with demos and prototypes as quickly as possible. So I think the real guiding point for me that could be a recommendation, that where it works really well, is where governmental institutions and regulatory institutions and trade associations create the opportunity for newer organizations to engage on their terms and have an action focus as opposed to a committee and review focus.
So cooperation where there are all these conflicts of interest between the different parties trying to cooperate, but actually who need to come together to move things forward. I mean, AMP Group must have seen this countless times, global. Can you give us some examples, please, Leiming?
Thank you, Dan. Fintechs such as AMP Group have been at the forefront of driving ESG and sustainability. And we believe that we have an opportunity to make the biggest impact in working with partners to engage user inclusion and SME empowerment in the green transition. At AMP Group, we have been working very hard to explore ways to engage work with our vast user base and partner network to drive going green. For example, in 2016, we started a program that is a gamification program embedded in Alipay app And through that program, we have driving ordinary consumers' usage through actions of low carbon, greener ways of lifestyle, really driving a lot of change in China. And we have been awarded UN Champion of the Nature. APP obviously is very widely used in China, and users can choose greener ways of living. For example, renting a bike or taking public transport or paying utility bills online to get green energy points. Once you accumulate enough green energy points on the APP, then you can plant virtual trees. And once you get virtual trees and actually end a group, we would work with partners in tree planting, biodiversity, restoration, preservation, and biological restoration organizations to plant trees and to preserve biological lands. And through engagement of 650 netizens, we have over the past 7 years planted 450 million trees and preserved millions of acres of lands. So on the cross-border side, we were trying to replicating that, working with our e-wallet partners in Southeast Asia to push that similar efforts. So I think we have a lot of great opportunities to work with different partners to really drive the sustainability efforts.
That's brilliant. And we have a little bit of a spread between the different players within this market, the different players who could cooperate. And there was a session earlier with MoneyHub and Lloyd's talking about little and large partnerships and how cooperations can be really difficult, even if ostensibly you're both working towards the same factors and you're both from the same part of the industry or the same sector. I mean, thinking through industry, regulators, government, who should be leading this? Maybe, Tom, maybe I'll jump to you.
Sure. So I like the little and large analogy, although I think most people in the audience are too young for that particular series on UK television. I always think that there's kind of a three-way here, right? You've got fintechs, you've got corporations, you've got the little and large, and you've got the regulators and the governmental organizations. We've run a whole bunch of programs to support trying to make that bit between the little and large work better. So we have a program called the E Awards, and actually a call out to UI Impact, who were on stage earlier, and the Credit Canary, who are in the audience here today, who've been participating in that program. And we also have a larger program it's Bento Box we call, but is Open Innovation Accelerator program to take UK organizations globally. That works pretty well. And so if I was asked to say who should be leading, I think the industry has to lead on this stuff, because it happens at a micro level. It's hard fought, every single deal, every single opportunity to take a concept, and we've heard from Leiming about what they've been doing as one example. Every single one of those, when you take it to another country, has to prove itself, has to be built out, requires passion, pain. We talk a lot about this kind of macro view of, we're going to guide it through enlightened regulation and so on. Of course you need a bit of that, but I think it's the industry that needs to lead. It's the people in this room, frankly, that can lead on that, and they lead on that by having interesting, relevant solutions to customers' problems, and those customer problems, back to Kerstin's points, are global and require, I would say, rather than global solutions, local solutions, so globally applicable solutions.
I think Flora might have something to say.
Yeah, I just, you know, having been around the block a little bit from the larger little, I guess you'd call Klarna and Wise, you know, with the challengers, the disruptors, you're still not the big global behemoths. And the challenge has always been is that we can deliver amazing solutions like our, you know, carbon tracking, budget tooling that's all in the Klarna app that allows consumers to guide their best decision making. But fundamentally, I've seen it time and time again, those things won't be implemented by the big institutions unless they're being told to. There's always a nice kind of initiative because it perhaps grabs a headline, but it's very much that guiding light, that push that requires everybody to do something, and for fundamental change to happen is only going to happen when there is a rule or a regulation. And you know, we talked about ESG. That's a really good example where we're seeing ESG is forcing through change through asset management and investor rules. Even if we've all got our, you know, improvements and ways it could be better, starting with something that's pushing even the worst providers, and I'll say the same for BNPL regulation. You know, when you actually have a comprehensive regulation, everybody's got to reach that standard, and so everybody has access to manageable credit, as opposed to only when the good providers, the cooperative, the collaborative, the forward-thinking, the socially conscious providers are doing something.
So I'm going to play devil's advocate. Leiming, is Ant Group only acting because it's being told it has to act in a good way, or is it doing it out of a social conscience?
We're told in some respects on some things we should and need to do. But on the ESG side, a big part of what we're doing is self-driving. And I think over the past decade, the governments and the regulators have done quite a lot in terms of policy formulation and alignment on climate. Now, I think the process really should be interactive. We need industry response to government policies, guidelines, but industry participants should also be driving the discussion actions forward. There are a lot of questions that we, as industry participants, we need to think about and pursue answers for. For example, how do we get access to credible carbon data? How technology can be used to collect, process, and verify green data, and how SMEs can be incentivized to go green and to do green reporting. And we see sort of a technology innovation will continue to drive that dialogue between governments, regulators, and industry participants. For example, we see blockchain as a fundamental technology for to solve traceability issue. And we see privacy preserving computing technology as the way to solve data sharing, in particular with respect to cross-border, cross-sectorial green data sharing. So there's a lot of things that we need to do, and then the government and regulators need to respond. So it's very much an interactive process. So I would say everywhere, everywhere, and everything, and all at once.
Brilliant, brilliant. We've only got a short period of time left, so maybe we'll move to looking globally, thinking about some examples and parties that are already taking the lead. Is there anyone that's already doing this well? Is there anybody we can look to and learn from and really be inspired by? Kerstin?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to choose an Innovate Finance example, actually, because this is something that's been exported to the rest of the world, and I think imitation is, you know, the greatest form of flattery. And so I'm going to use the Khalifa review as an example where different parties across the ecosystem came together to collaborate, to come up with new solutions, try some out-of-the-box thinking, and then get the necessary buy-in to take them forward. Very much constructed in a UK context, but there's been so many jurisdictions and countries across the world who have looked to that review as an example of best practice and have gone away and copied it. And isn't that an amazing achievement? And I'm also using the example, of course, because it's a great example of the partnership between Innovate Finance and the City of London, but it also has so many other useful lessons that we can learn from.
What a shameless plug.
Janine is smiling, she's happy.
Tom, what are your thoughts?
We should have checked in advance on what we were going to say on this topic. So maybe a couple of examples. So I would also say, certainly having participated in a number of activities in and around Innovate Finance into Japan, as our mothership, and the programs that have been developed there to effectively do the matchmaking between big and little and the Japanese mega banks. Hugely impactful program, really effective, perhaps not obviously on the scale of what you're talking about in terms of its global reach, but back to my point before, change is done at a micro level, it's done in every deal that you're doing at a solution level, and that is incredibly hard work and hard fought by every startup in the room with every deal that they're doing. And fostering that collaboration across borders and accelerating it is really powerful. So certainly I would call that out. Maybe on a completely different topic though. We heard a lot today about the kind of data, say interoperability of data, the challenge of not having sufficient information, certainly from a ESG perspective, especially around sustainability for the supply chain to enable the impact investing of organizations like UI Impact or others. Or we had Kogo on stage earlier as well with the brilliant stuff they're doing. That's an area where I feel like the financial services industry has still got quite a long way to go compared to some of the cross-industry kind of working groups. So organizations like the CDP, like the GSF, so the Green Software Foundation, EcoVadis, you know, cross-industry organizations that are driving the development of data interoperability standards, clarity over, to be a bit geeky, the semantics of the data that is there. Because if you focus just on, much like in open banking, if you focus just on the interface itself and for interoperability, that doesn't mean that what's being exchanged is the same. So those two areas, I think, one, as I say, clearly in the banking space, the other one maybe where banking could contribute more in the cross-industry space. Brilliant.
And Flora, we've heard how Kerstin thinks that City of London Corporation and Innovate Finance are doing it and leading the way. Is Klarna also leading the way, or do you have any other thoughts?
I'm going to talk about a couple of examples because from my experience working in global policy. So one that just really is brought to mind is, because my key point is the quality of the cooperation as opposed to the originator of the cooperation. I don't mind who convenes it, but if you do it effectively, that's the best thing. And so To use two really good examples very quickly, because I know we're running out of time, Japan has a beautiful part of their policy process. They're always moving forward, but particularly they have these working groups, and you all get together in a room for a limited period of time, and you have to come forward with actions. And it's just an addition to the consultation process that's very inclusive and thoughtful and means that we actually move forward with meaningful policy. The other, which is my favorite example, is the EU has these public hearings where we basically, a public body convenes a proper conference together to talk about a policy issue and actually think about it. And I think those sorts of moments have been real great moments of global cooperation where I have been able to, you know, a Brit based out of London working for an Estonian and now a Swedish firm, I'm able to engage in these foreign policy, you know, financial services policy matters in a really effective way to bring about better outcomes. So they're my two little examples. So I'm not going to beat the drum for Klarna necessarily, more the actual cooperative engagement and of course all of us being here.
I mean, that's
so
right.
I've got to quickly add just to that, just a lovely word for the people in the audience from the Japanese collaboration approach, nemawashi. So nemawashi, feeding the roots is literally what it means, but it is that ongoing process of consultation, but progressive consultation. That's the point, action orientation. Yeah.
Well, thank you everyone for your thoughts. We're running out of time, and I'm going to leave it to Lou to be the only person between all of you and your networking drinks. But please join with me in thanking the panel.